Hello, my name is Neil with BigfootTalk.com. And when I was a kid, I was always interested in cryptids. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, which is really synonymous with each other, the Loch Ness Monster, UFOs, all of it. But I always thought because there were so many encounters that Bigfoot had a 50-50 chance of actually being alive and real at the time. But I always thought they were going to be on the West Coast. I thought they'd be in California, Oregon, Washington State, Alaska, Canada. But I lived way out in the country and I was in the woods all the time. At the age of 8 years old, I was always in the woods because my parents let me go in the woods because I'd been with my dad in the woods several times after that, and they felt like I was safe going into the woods. So I learned a lot about the animals. While I was there, I learned how the animals in the woods have their own language, how they talk to each other, and especially the squirrels. The squirrels will let you know what's going on around you because they have a different call for anything that occurs. They make a call for hawks or owls coming by. They make a call for deer coming under there eating their acorns. I could close my eyes and listen to the squirrels and I could tell what was going on. And then I would open my eyes to verify it, to see that it was true. Crows were my nemesis because they would circle an area and they made you wear orange when you were in the woods hunting or in the woods, period. And they would always spot me and always give me away. Now, I knew once the crows spotted you and were in the woods, if you're hunting, you may see a little deer or a doe, but you're not going to see the big bucks. They're already warned. They'll remember it. They will not come around. But I learned so much about the woods. I was in the woods so much that my mom actually put a bell in the front yard to call me to come out of the woods. So then I take you to present time. About 10 years ago, my wife and I were looking for some property to retire in. And I always had been in a little bit of property. I wanted to be able to see the animals and be around them. So she found this property in North Georgia. It had been abandoned for about 8 to 10 years. And when we drove in the driveway, I didn't really like it because the front field was all grown up because it had been abandoned for about 8 to 10 years. But as you go down this long driveway deep in the woods, then all of a sudden you see the house. And the house was really nice. And I noticed that in going down the driveway, there was everything that bucks could want, deer could want. You had honeysuckle, scuppling vines, some old grapevines, browse for them to eat. Everything that deer would like is on the property. And I used to love to watch deer. The property had two nice streams on it, an old dried up pond. So I said, this would be a buck haven. So after we looked at the house, it was grown up behind it and around it. We went ahead and bought the property because I thought that we could straighten it out and get it to where the property would look really nice because we wanted this to be our retirement home. We wanted to have it just the way we wanted it. So we had to do several things. We had to put a pad, bring in several hundred loads of dirt to make a pad to build it up for the kids to park on, put a barn on it, bush hogged all the stuff down in the front field, all the stuff down in the back, got it cleaned off. Then we planted a bunch of fruit trees because I always wanted fruit trees. I'd always lived in the country and we always had different things. And so I always wanted to get fruit trees. So I had two different type apple trees, two different type peach trees, two different type pear trees, figs, pecans, all kind of stuff. And so all this stuff was there, and blueberry bushes, of course. So we had all kind of stuff that we had planted. We also planted persimmon trees because after a while, I noticed that for some reason, being the perfect environment for deer, there wasn't that many deer tracks, which really confused me. Why isn't there more deer here? It's got everything for them, but there wasn't that many deer on the property. So then, in addition to planting persimmon trees, We planted some clover out in the front field, winter peas during the winter. We did supplemental feeding. We put corn, we put stump feeders out there with corn and supplemental feeding for them. We put a bunch of bird feeders in the back, right off the back porch, so that we could see the birds, because I just love nature. I love the sound they make. I love everything about it. Now, the deer started to come, and my wife would always go out in the morning, and right in the backyard to the right of our back porch, the deer would come and eat in a stump feeder. And she would always say, "Hey, little deer." And they would just look at her, wag their tail, and start eating again, because they knew she was safe. Well, we had lived in the house for several years. And all of a sudden, I started seeing stuff that made no sense, because I've been in the woods all my life. The animals I grew up around are the same animals that are here. And lucky enough, this property did not have bear on it. So I'm looking at the property and I'm seeing things that don't make sense, and I just can't figure it out. Back in the back, near the bottom, there's this trail. This trail is, I'm 6'4", and I'm got long arms, and this trail opens up and is about at least a foot to 2 foot wider than my shoulders are, much higher than I am. And the trail is, everything on the trail is smashed. I mean, deer, when they step on a little twig, they snap it, but it doesn't crunch it. It doesn't smash it. Didn't make any sense.
Hi, I'm Linda Eastburn of Linda Eastburn YouTube channel, and I have a new book out called Threshold to Encounters. It's about 40 years of research and experience with all of these wild cryptids that many of you I know have encountered yourself. You can find it on Amazon.com.
I kept looking at it and looking at it. Didn't see any deer prints or anything, and it made no sense. Actually, I saw where they've been jumping the fence on up it. So I'm like, why the deer jumping the fence here when they could walk on this trail? That made no sense. The only animal I was going through my head, because I always start going through what animals could make it. The only animal I could think that would make that is elephants, because it had to be something with flat feet with tremendous amount of weight to crush everything. But there's no elephants that are escaped in Georgia. So it couldn't be an elephant. But that's the only animal I could think that would do that. Then another thing, across the creek, we had to build a trail. We had to run over a bunch of trees and cut them down to build a trail to go to the pond that I wanted to go ahead and fill up. But on the other side of the creek, now the banks of the creek was 8 to 12 foot tall, but they used a bulldozer to make the trail across it. So it was smooth, but on the sides of it, it had the real high banks. On the other side of the creek, there were these huge logs about the size of my waist, and they were broken, but they weren't on either side. They were broken and inside the cut, 3 of them. There were no axe marks. There were no chainsaw marks. There was nothing. These had been broken and placed there on the road side to side. That made no sense to me. This property is abandoned. Why would anybody go and put those there? And how would they break them? Maybe they had a bulldozer and something and they found a way to break them. I don't know, but I saw no marks of tools of any kind. So it took a while, but I had to drag them to the side out of the way, go to the pond. And when we get to the pond, we refill the pond. And when you restock a pond, it takes a lot to go through restocking it. You got to put baby minnows in first, then 6 months later, baby brim, and then a year later, the bass, so that the bass don't eat all the little fish. And so it'll repopulate itself. Well, we had just put the minnows in there and we're getting them stocked and ready. But what happened was crazy. It had an old open side barn next to it and had sawdust in it where they had been making furniture. So we went over there and made the pond, filled it up, put the fish in it. But then all of a sudden one morning I saw smoke coming from over there. So I took two of our sons. We went to the pond and found out that somehow something had ignited the sawdust. And I think maybe somebody had lit a cigarette over there and thrown it down in the sawdust when it was damp, and it just took a while to smolder. But that was on fire. So I had either me or one of the boys went back and got two buckets. And the way I had to do it is I had to put one of the kids down in the creek to get water, and the other one had to grab it and bring it to me for me to throw it on it. Inside the barn, there was an old table with plywood on it, probably where they were putting lumber on it and cutting it off the side of it. But the fire, I had a metal rake in the back of the side by side, and I kept pushing the fire underneath it because when it wasn't, it was almost getting to the roof, which was 14 to 20 foot tall. So I kept pushing it under, pushing it under. I didn't think I was going to be able to get it out myself with the kids. So I had one of them go ahead and call the fire department, which wasn't far away. And by the time they got there, I'd gotten it almost under control. I got it to where I could have gotten it out. But what I didn't count on is the fire never went through the table. And I couldn't understand that. Here's what I believe is a wood table, and the fire's not burning through it. Well, when the firemen got there, they took the legs and the sideboard, which was really heavy, made out of old oak, and threw them into the pond. And then we found out that it was an old pool table. The slate in it was stopping the fire from going through it. That's why it wasn't burning through it and getting to the roof, which I was very lucky for. But then after I had the minnows in there, and a lot of people don't know about minnows. There's two types. One has sticky eggs, which they put under the bottom of sticks. Others have regular eggs that they drop into the leaves and stuff. Well, these had sticky eggs, so they put them on the bottom of sticks. The big pieces they threw in there were floating, and the burnt side was down. They all were within about 3 foot of the bank. There was one in all four corners and one on each side. And I said, I need to get them out because I don't want the fish to try to lay the eggs on them and it kill them because of all the burnt stuff. So I go in the pond and I flip it over, and there were leeches all over the bottom where the burnt side is. And there were huge leeches. There were a lot of leeches and they were huge. So I had to knock them off, throw the pieces of wood in the boat, and hope that we got them all so they don't get on you because they'll stick on you also. Got them out, drove to the edge of the pond and threw them up on this hill where the bulldozer had pushed a bunch of the dirt when they made the pond. And crazy enough, the next weekend, all the boards are back in the pond. Now, some of these weighed 40 to 50 pounds, 30 to 50 pounds, because this is hard old oak, and it was really old and really heavy. But what was really weird is not only did they get back in the water, which means something had to have hands to do this, but they were burnt side down again. And I don't know if you know a lot about wood, but my dad used to make furniture. The burnt side is the light side. The other side is the heavy side. So the burnt side, at least half the time, should be up at a minimum half the time, usually more than that, but they're all down in the water. It made no sense. Beaver's not going to do that. There's a little trail that we drive on in between the pond and the hill, and it was way up on the hill. Raccoons aren't going to do it. There's no bear. None of them would do it anyway. How did they get back in the pond? And there's no current in the pond because we had to pull water out of one of the creeks and fill it up. So we just filled it up. So there's no current in the pond to push it to where they were. Made no sense. Take them out again. Same process. Go back the next weekend. They're back in the pond. The same sticks in the same spots or same areas within a couple of feet. in all four corners and on each side within 3 foot of the bank, and the burnt side is down. I'm just going nuts because I can't figure out what's doing it. I, in my mind, know every animal that's in the woods because I've been in the woods all my life and know all the animals, but I couldn't figure this out. There were no, I looked around, there were no signs of human footprints. The way the creeks were done, it blocks people from coming to any road, and the only trail in and out is that one trail we made. So we take them out one more time. The next weekend, they're back in again. I said, heck with it. The burnt side was down. They were in the same area. It's almost like something wanted the burnt side down to attract these leeches, and seemed like they might have been eating them as a food source. I mean, you could go out there and flip them over, eat the leeches, and turn them back over, and more would be there the next time you wanted something to eat. It's a protein source for some animals, especially other fish, but we didn't have the fish in there that would eat leeches at the time. We just had the little baby minnows, which wouldn't do anything to leeches. So that's another thing that didn't make sense. All of a sudden, Christmas of 2019, our kids bought me a cutout of Bigfoot painted black, and it's life size. And we put it in the backyard, off the back porch, right at the wood's edge, right where the trees start, so I could see it off the back porch. Because I loved it, because, you know, I was always interested in them and stuff like that. Here I could sit on the back porch and see this outline of a Bigfoot in the backyard. So I loved it. It was great. Then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, my wife is watching a movie in the living room. Now, she likes scary movies, and this was a scary movie. I went to bed because I don't like scary movies. For some reason, I don't get scared. I get mad. And it's not what I wanted to watch, you know, before you go to bed, get mad. So I let her watch her movie. About 1 a.m. in the morning, the movie was over, and she was hot because she had the fireplace on. She decided to go on the back porch just to cool off a little bit because it's cooler outside because it's wintertime. She goes out there, and as soon as she gets out there, to her right, there is a loud whistle, louder than a train whistle. And she had never heard a whistle that loud. And she had heard a bunch of her friends in high school whistle as loud as they could, and they were loud, but nothing compared to this. We had dogs in a pen out in the backyard. They were barking, jumping up and down on the fence, going crazy. All of a sudden, it moved 30 to 35 yards to the left. It was right between the bird feeders and the cutout. It whistled again, just out of sight, so she couldn't see what's doing it. Now, at this time, she's thinking it must be one of the kids playing a trick on her somehow. So she yelled out, "They're not going to play tricks now. Y'all come on inside. Y'all are going to scare me. Come inside. Your game's over." Nothing answered. There were no flashlights. There was nothing of any light substance coming from there. The dogs are still going crazy. It walked another 30 to 35 yards, and it was within 5 yards of the dogs, jumping up and down on the fence, growling, barking, whistled again. Well, she knew then that the dogs wouldn't be acting that way if it was one of the kids. So she's totally confused. She has no idea what it is. Then it goes another 30, 35 yards down to the creek and whistles again. And she knew then it wasn't the kids. The kids would not be down by the creek in the dark without a flashlight. They would not do it. They weren't raised in the woods like me. That wouldn't happen. So she ran in the house, checked, and sure enough, all the kids were asleep. She goes, wakes me up, and she says, come outside quick. There's something out here. I go outside. She tells me the whole story, and I know it's the truth because she never lies, but I don't hear anything. But I'm thinking about it in relationship to all this other stuff I've seen, and I'm just going, it doesn't make sense. The only animal I've actually heard whistle was a matriarchal doe one time that had a group of does with her, and I'd slipped up on her and she didn't realize it. And when she did, she whistled and they all just exploded in all different directions. And I'd only heard that one time. But a deer, even during rut, if it's going towards dogs, as soon as the dogs bark, they're going the other way or going 90 degrees away from it. They would never get that close to dogs at all, jumping up and down. So I knew it wasn't a deer. So then I just kept that in the back of my head. Just another thing that didn't make sense. 2 weeks after that, at 4:47 in the morning, we're asleep in the bed. We have a brick house. We have a heavy pitcher above our bed that's 20 to 30 pounds. Something hit the house high up on the house from the outside. I'm a light sleeper, and as soon as it hit, the whole house shook. I opened my eyes and I saw the top part of the pitcher coming back to the wall, which means that the top part went out first. Then the bottom part came out. I mean, it came out 2 to 3 inches. And when it went back, the whole thing turned sideways. And that didn't make sense. My wife never wakes up, and she woke up and she goes, "What was that?" And I said, "I have no idea what that was." So I woke up and I was trying to figure out what it was. So I'm starting to go running through, like I normally do. I run through all the options. Okay. An earthquake. Could it have been an earthquake? No, I've been through an earthquake, and it's like a wave running under the floor of the house. So it was not an earthquake. The second thing I thought was a sonic boom from a jet. It wasn't a sonic boom from a jet because when they do that, you always can hear the afterwash wash from it, and you hear the boom. What this was something hit the house. There was no afterwash. It wasn't a jet. And then the next thing, the most likely thing, is a tree falling on the house. Well, the trees are so far away from the house that they would never hit the house if they fell. And the second thing was there was no bad weather. There was no wind outside. It wasn't a tree. So I get up and I told her I would investigate it and stuff. So I woke up. I wanted her to go back to sleep. I go into the bathroom, get my iPad, and I'm searching the county and cities around us to see if anything happened. Was it possibly an explosion of some sort that shook the house? I go look, and it's crickets. There is nothing in any of the areas around it that anybody's reported that could have happened. So again, it doesn't make sense. So the next morning I go outside, the grass is all matted down by the house, and the dust up on the brick wall has been knocked off of it. A big circle, 9 to 10 foot up on the wall, where something had hit it and all the dirt and dust came off of it. Now, I couldn't see a handprint. I couldn't see any footprints or anything. But what I'm seeing, it hit that high on the wall. And I'm 6'4" long arms. And when I tried to reach up to where it hit, I couldn't even reach it. I'm like, holy cow, what in the world happened? It's not like a wild boar or something being chased by something and run into your house. That would have been low to the ground. This was 9 to 10 foot up. It was actually right next to the roof. It actually hit so hard that we had a couple of investigators come later, and they found out that there's a window on each side of the bedroom. On my wife's side of the bedroom, the bricks cracked from the corner, the top left corner, closest to where it hit, all the way to the roof. It cracked the bricks all the way up. That's how hard the hit was. So I started thinking, and I'm not sure if I checked this in the morning or that night after, but at some point in time, I went and put in Bigfoot in the town's name near us. All of a sudden, there is a Class A sighting on the BFRO that came up. Now it had the location hidden, and I'm wondering, okay, this location's hidden, but I'm reading it. It's telling me the nearest roads. It's telling me a lot of information, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, that's close to where we are. They actually saw the creature. It growled. It threw stuff at them. So, I mean, it was a scary encounter. And I said, I've got to find out where this is. It sounds like it's really close to our property. And remember, our property had been abandoned for 8 to 10 years. So I knew a guy that was that a lot of people consider to be an expert. Now, I don't consider anybody to be an expert in the field because nobody knows exactly what they are and everything about them. But if there would be one, he would be a person that's as close as you can get to being an expert. So I called him up. After several attempts, I talked to him and I told him some of the stuff that I saw. And I was asking him, do you know somebody that's a BFRO? Because I'm trying to get in touch with this person to find out where this location is. That was my goal, was to find the location of that report. All of a sudden, he goes, well, I've been in the BFRO and I know that person and they're no longer around doing this. And we've lost touch. So we don't even know her phone number now. We know that the one she has been disconnected. I said, okay. He said, well, tell me what's going on. So I told him about all the stuff I'd seen. I told him about the whistling. I told him about the hit on the house. And then he goes, okay, can I ask you some questions? And I said, yes. He goes, do you hunt? And I said, I used to hunt as a kid. I don't hunt anymore because my dad always taught me, if you're going to kill something, only do it if you're going to eat it. Now, I've got deer all over the place now from planting everything. And I told him about me planting the clover and that the deer weren't there, the winter peas, the stump feeders. I said, so I've got a lot of deer here. When my wife goes out and talks to them in the morning, they just look at her, wag their tail, meaning that everything's safe, and start eating again. And I said, my wife wouldn't eat it. She wouldn't cook it. I said, I know how to cook it, but she would never eat it. So I'm not going to shoot them or any other animal on the property because I'm not going to eat it. And it's not fair to kill something just to kill something. I said, I was raised different than that. He said, okay. He said, you said you planted a bunch of stuff. He goes, you told me about the stuff you planted for the deer. Do you have other stuff planted? I said, yeah, I planted a bunch of fruit trees. And I told him about all the fruit trees I had and the blueberry bushes and that we have fig trees and persimmon trees, and told him about all that. He said, okay, so you hunt and you have a lot of fruit trees and stuff that you planted. I said, yes. He said, okay. He said, have you ever found fruit missing? And I said, well, I planted it all from baby saplings. I said, most of it hadn't made, but the peaches have made the last couple of years. And the strange thing about it is I put netting around it because the deer started eating the leaves off of it. So I had to put deer netting around it about several foot from it, 6 foot tall with T-posts. And I put fabric on the ground to stop the grass from competing with the water and the fertilizer and the soil. And so, but when I tell everybody at the house, okay, the peaches are about ripe. So I'm going to pick some peaches this weekend. I need y'all's help because some of them were 8 to 10 foot tall up on the trees. And so I'd have to get a ladder, climb the ladder, reach way over. So somebody's going to have to hold it down and all that good stuff. But the next weekend, every peach was gone. There was nothing on the fabric on the ground. There was no peach pits. There was nothing. They were gone. And that happened both years. He said, okay, have you had other fruit go missing? I said, yeah, the figs go missing when they get ripe, and the persimmons go missing when they get ripe, because the fig trees were already there, and the persimmon trees were done from pieces already taken off a tree, so it thinks it's older, so even if it's small, it's going to make some persimmons. He said, okay. He said, I think I know what's going on. I said, okay, what's going on? He said, you know what it is because you called me. And I said, well, what is it? He said, you have a Bigfoot. And that kind of freaked me out because even though I was calling because I thought that was a chance, I never thought, I was 99.9% sure no Bigfoot would ever be around this area. it just was not in my reality. Mine was they would be on the West Coast or up in Alaska and Canada. I said, okay, well, what does that mean? He goes, they're trying to let you know that they are here and they want to coexist with you. Well, that blew my mind. I'm like, I just tell this guy that this stuff, and he tells me there's a Bigfoot and tells me what they're trying to do. And that just freaked me out. So I said, how do you know that? Because at this point, I was questioning what he was saying. He goes, well, let me ask you some more questions. I said, okay. He goes, have you ever had anything run by your house at night, hitting it 4 or 5 times in the middle of the night and waking y'all up? No. Have you ever had anything pushing trees over your driveway? No. Have you ever heard growls at night in the woods, either in front of your house, back of your house, when you've been out there? No. He goes, have you ever heard pebbles or acorns or sticks or anything hitting your back porch or your barn or your house? No. He said if they didn't want you there, that's what they would do. So I'm like, okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and take what he's saying in and go with it. But I've always gone by the motto, trust but verify. So at this time, I still, even though I've seen strange stuff, and the strange stuff matches Bigfoot, because whatever's doing all this stuff is heavy, flat-footed, and has hands. So I started thinking, how can I prove this? How can I prove that they're actually here? So after a while, I came up with the idea down along the trail that it looked like elephants had been walking on. I can go and put 2 headless nails in a tree as high up as I can reach, and then put red delicious apples in them and see if anything happens. So I go down there, I put them on there, but I've got to see a footprint. So I take a metal rake and I rake down the leaves, and underneath it is soft and spongy. So I stopped right there because if something heavy stepped on it, I would be able to see the impression of a footprint. Sure enough, I go there the next day, the apples are gone. So I'm excited. I go and look, and there is a human shaped footprint, 16 to 16 and a half inches long, pressed down in the soft leaves and left the outline on it. You could see the toes, you could see the outline perfectly. And I put my foot up against it, and my shoe is 13 and a half inches long. So that's how I know it was 16 to 16 and a half. So I said, okay, that's what we do have. We do have a Bigfoot. But so what I think happened was they had seen me looking at the trail, looking at the stuff in the pond, knowing I threw them out and all this other stuff. And when I put that cutout out there, I think they thought that I knew they were there. And that's why I put it out. And they decided to let me know that they were there. Here I am feeding all the other animals. We're not hunting them. We're not threatening them. We love nature. And somehow they knew that and decided to let us know they were there. So we started putting apples out. Then I said, okay, so I would put apples up there probably twice a week, once in the middle of the week and then once on the weekend. Sometimes 3 times if I put them back to back on the weekends, because it's just red delicious apples, 2 of them. So I'm putting them out down there, and then all of a sudden I think to myself, one that's this big has got to eat more than 2 apples, and if there's more, they're definitely going to eat more. So where is it that I can put more apples? And I'm thinking this in my head. I'm looking around. I don't see any place to put any more apples. I actually did nail 2 more above that, but I had to get a ladder to do it. But I got tired of toting the ladder out there. And this was before I decided that. I got tired of toting the ladder every time and going up there and almost falling. I said, heck with that. So the next time I go down there, I go look, and on the other side of the fence, there is a TP shaped structure made. There was a vine that went up vertical, then it went parallel for about a foot, and then it went up into a tree. And there were four sticks that were at different angles and made like a TP shape and made a cup on the top. I said, okay, great. I can put one here. And so I put one on it, and it covered the apple 3/4 of the way up the apple. I'm like, okay, great. So I'll see how smart they are. I'll see if they can find it. So I go down the next day, the apples are gone, and that one's gone. I'm like, hey, they're pretty smart. They found that apple and it's easy. Then I look to my left. Lo and behold, there is another structure made the same way on a limb off of a little bitty bush. I'm like, wait a second, I know that one wasn't there. So then I started looking at them really close, and I'm realizing that the sticks these are made out of weren't off of any trees right around there. Then I go pull one out of the ground, and the part in the ground was 3 to 4 inches deep and sharp, and the top had been snapped off even, and all the ones on top were the exact same level. In other words, they've been stuck in the ground and snapped off after they were stuck in the ground, and they were made to be at the same level, which was crazy. And then I realized they made them. They had made those teepee shaped structures for me to put apples on. Now, at the time, I was like, how did they know to do that? Is it possible? Because I'd been looking at some stuff. Is it possible they were reading my mind? And I just kind of blew it off a little bit. I said, no, they saw me looking around trying to find something, and they were watching me, and, they figured out what I was doing. And after I put an apple on that first one, then they made another one to get another apple. And I was kind of mad at the beginning because I was testing how smart they were. And they made a structure that for me to put an apple, and I put it right there. So at first I'm like, well, who's the smarter one, me or them? They made a structure for me to put an apple on, and I put it right there on it for them. But then I just kind of laughed, and I was like, well, they're much smarter than anybody gives them credit for, because to know how to make this and to know how I would use it and stuff, that's, really intelligent. So then I getting with my wife, I'm like, they're here. So we need to find a way to interact with them. Very few people know much about these creatures. We need to learn from them and figure out everything about what they do, how they live, whatever we can learn. So I started thinking, how can we interact with them? And then I'd heard about gifting, and I'd heard that they like blue marbles. So there's a stump feeder down there, and the stump feeder's flat on top and has little rings at the top on the plastic to where you can put marbles, blue marbles. So I put 9 or 10 blue marbles on it to leave it as a gift for them. My wife and I go down the next, I think we put them out on a Wednesday, and we go out there on a Saturday. All the marbles are gone. There's none on the ground. There's none on the top. They're all gone. I'm like, yes, they took the marbles. And the reason I put 9 or 10, because once in a while a crow will take them, but a crow might take one. They're not going to take 9 or 10 of them. And I saw where the ground was pressed down near it. So I know that, something heavy had been there. I couldn't really see the footprint because the ground here is so compacted. So I told my wife about it. She wanted to see it. So then we go down there and see the marbles are gone and everything. And then we're driving up the trail. Now, the trail that we have is made with a side-by-side. It's made in the shape of a U because of the property line and the creek. And as we're going up the other side, all of a sudden, there's a huge boulder, 80 to 100 pounds on the right side of the trail. Now, this is right near where we left the marbles. Then there's another one, 40 to 60 pounds on the left side. Now, they were both river rocks, but they were different type rocks. Now, my wife said, where'd those come from? I said, I have no idea where those came from. Now, my wife does all the mowing. She loves to mow. It's her relaxation. So I bought her a really nice 60-inch zero turn because we got so much stuff to mow, and she loves it. So if anybody knew if they were there or not, she would know because she mows there. So then I'm like going through my head and thinking, okay, I never thought it would be a gift because I'd always, from stuff I knew, they said it would be a feather, a bone, sticks tied together, flowers, something like that. And this was just big, huge river rocks. Now, it took effort to get them out of the creek because remember, the creek had 8 to 10 foot tall, in some places 12 foot tall banks. So it took effort to carry those up out of there. So 2 weeks later, my wife and I are coming back from out of state where my mom lives, and she's sleeping. And I start thinking about it. I'm like, maybe that is a gift they left us because the marbles are hard like a rock. The river rocks are smooth. So maybe they did give us that as a gift back for the marbles. So we got home late Sunday night, and I decide to shoot through the woods and go down there and see if they're still there just to check it out a little bit more. So I shoot through the woods. They're gone. The river rocks are not there anymore. I'm like, what the heck happened to them? They were here and now they're not here. So I'm driving on up by the trail. There's one peach tree they really like a lot. When I get to it, right by that peach tree where it had recently been mowed is the big rock, the one that weighs 80 to 100 pounds, had been dropped there right by the peach tree. I said, wow, it's been moved. It got moved from down there to up here. That's 50 yards. And then I said, well, where are the others? So I went around and started driving the whole trail right there. And on the other side, right at the base of where we had made the parking lot for the kids, the other one was down there on one side and another one just like it on the other side. So not only did they move the other one to the other side of the trail, but put one just like it on the other side of that trail. So now there were three. So I decided we need to take these because this is a gift. We need to accept them because if I accept them, then that means we want to coexist with them. In my head, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm feeling is that they moved them to make sure we saw them and they want us to accept it. So we accept them being here and coexisting with us. So we picked them up and put them by the steps on our back porch. Sure enough, more stuff started happening. So I'm thinking of ways that we can interact with them, get more interaction. So I decided, hey, so they like blue marbles. So let's try this. Let's try to take a pie plate, a glass pie plate, put really white aquarium sand on it, take blue marbles and make a smiley face, put in the sand and leave it on top of the stump feeder and see if we can get them to start interacting with us somehow with them. So we put them on there. It's perfectly level. When we get down there, the next time we go down there, I think was probably a Wednesday, they've been pulled to the bottom of the plate. Now, it looked like I saw maybe some fingertip prints on the other side, but you really couldn't tell enough to know 100%. So, excuse me. So I decided to go ahead, make a smiley face again. Come back the next weekend. They've been moved to the bottom of the plate again. Make another smiley face. Next time we go down there, they're moved to the bottom of the plate again. And I finally said, I don't know what's doing this. Heck with it. I'm going to just go and, this didn't work. They got moved, but we can't really verify what's moving them. So we're just going to leave them. A week and a half later, we go back down there. The marbles were made in a smiley face. So what they had been doing was they were playing a game with us and moving them to the bottom of the plate, reacting to us. But when we stopped, they made a smiley face back to us because they wanted to continue playing or interacting with us. And they started realizing what we were doing with it because something happened later on that shows that they understood that we were trying to interact with them. Because what happened was one night around 2 in the morning, and like most guys that are older in age, have to go to the bathroom a couple times during the night. And anytime I'd hear the dogs barking, I would open the bathroom door to see if I hear a howl or a tree knock, which I'd heard, and just listen to see what I can hear because they're barking at something. Something's causing them to bark. If they're not barking, I'm not opening it, but they're barking at something. So I open the door to the bathroom, which is right off the back porch. All of a sudden, where they're barking is at the edge of the woods, about where the cutout is, or from that direction. And it's slowly starting to move towards the back porch. And the closer it would be coming to the back porch, the louder they're barking. But I dismissed it because back behind where it would have been coming to the porch, there's a road and the deer feeders up there in the corner. So I thought that maybe it was a deer that was walking up there they saw, or maybe it was a coyote up there that they saw. So I didn't really, I kind of discount the fact that it was really a Bigfoot coming to our back porch. But as it got near the porch, the dogs were really going loud and crazy, which is different because I'd heard them barking at a deer or coyote coming up there, and it's a different bark, not as aggressive or loud. All of a sudden, something hit the back porch. Bam, on the back porch. The whole back porch shook. The bathroom shook. And I'm like, okay, that's a little bit too close. I knew exactly what it was at the time. But the strange part about it was I did not hear, I know they throw rocks, but I didn't hear a rock sliding or bouncing on the back porch. So the next morning, I go out there, I see where a rock had hit the back porch, and I knew immediately it was a rock by the sound. I mean, the rocks make, I used to hit rocks off of wood and play like I was at a baseball game, and I would just pick up rocks, toss them up, and hit them. So I know what the sound of rock hitting wood's like. I see where it hit, but I search on the whole back porch. There is no rock. Now, this rock had to have been hand size, sort of like a baseball or something size or softball. And it didn't break the porch because where it hit was right on one of the supports underneath it, but it did it in good, and you could see some of the dirt and stuff off of it to know it was a rock and it was fresh. So I was confused. I called another guy that I knew. It actually was one of the people that came down to investigate the place after we reported it to the guy in North Georgia. And while they were there, by the way, they found where the bricks had been cracked. They found footprints. They found where a big boy trail was. They found where trees had been bent over and tied together. So they found all kind of stuff. So they verified, yes, you definitely have some, and they've been here for a long time because where they've been breaking some branches off trees, it was old to where it was almost rotting, but he knows what a big boy trail is and knows that it was made by a Bigfoot. So anyway, I told him what had happened, and I told him it didn't make sense because I didn't find a rock. He said, what happened was, by what you're telling me, one of them was going hunting by itself and had a throwing rock with them. He said when they hunt by themselves, they would carry a rock in their hand so they can hit a raccoon, they can hit a rabbit, they can hit stuff with it and try to stun them so it's easier for them to catch them. So he it probably had a throwing rock in his hand and goes over and slams it on the porch because he could either smell you or see the light from the door being open and wanted to let you know he was there. Or for some reason, make sure you knew he was there. I said, okay. I said, that's crazy, but okay, it makes sense. So The next time I go down to the marble plate, the marbles are in the shape of a house. I went back and took a picture of where it hit the house, and it was the exact same. It looked the exact same as the picture that was in the marble plate. Now, I didn't tell the kids about the porch being hit, so they didn't make it. Also on the ground by the stump feeder was a throwing rock, a rock that would fit in the hands, and it almost looked like there were fingerprints in the rock, which was crazy. I mean, I don't know how it could be. I don't know how. I know they're extremely strong, but I don't get how they could press a rock so hard that leave fingerprints in it. But that's what it looks like for me, as if to say, "Hey, that was us. Sorry that we scared you, and here's a gift because we scared you." Or it really didn't scare me. It was more like it stunned me because it was too close. And how everything shook from the hit, I knew whatever that was is not something I'm going to mess with, because I don't have a chance in heck hand to hand against that. It's just the hit was that hard. So they used the marble plate to interact and send us messages. And I'm thinking, how smart is this? This is incredible. This creature is so smart that it was interacting with us with the marbles, but now it's giving me messages letting me know they did it, and giving me a gift because they saw me slam the door closed. Now I'm just thinking, okay, so we're getting somewhere now. We're getting some interactions. We're getting them to show us stuff. And at the time, I was very naive, still about the subject. And here I am thinking that, well, it's just an animal like any other animal. Bad mistake. But it was in my head at the time. So I said, well, I'm feeding the deer, I'm feeding the birds, I'm feeding the fish, I'm feeding basically every animal out there, because when I'm putting corn out there, the raccoons are eating it, the squirrels are eating it. So basically, I'm feeding everything just so I can see them and enjoy them. So let me make a gifting station out down there and put food out for it, more than just 2 apples. So we made a gifting station. And I wanted to learn how they ate, what they did different, just try to learn from putting stuff out there. And I learned a lot. I learned a tremendous amount by doing it. Now, I can tell you that they've never hit our house or done anything like that when it runs out of food, because they can eat so much in 2 days. It's incredible. So, I mean, I put stuff down there, not just food, but I put little gifts and things to see what they'll do. I put popsicle sticks that are different colored to see what they'll do with them, little toy zebras and animals that are, you can buy at the dollar store and stuff, just to see what they would do with them and stuff. So I was just running a lot of tests like that just to see what would happen. And I learned a lot from that. But I started putting stuff out, and I was putting out like 14 pounds of dog food. And I'll tell you why I did dog food. There was a 35-pound bag of dog food on our back porch for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. We have security cameras on the back porch facing the door and facing where we park the cars. They aren't facing to where they hit. That's on the other side. But where this dog food was, the cameras would have picked them up if they came and took it off the back porch. So I go to look at the cameras because the dog food's gone. Everybody in the house said, I didn't take it. I didn't move it. And it's not something they would do, because if they move it, they would be feeding the dogs, and I do that. So they're not going to go extra and do it. So I was like, okay, well, let me check the cameras. Let me see what happened to it. Now, I saw it there on Friday afternoon, and this is Sunday afternoon. So it was less than 48 hours later, or about 48 hours. I started looking at the camera, and the camera went dead Friday night. both of the cameras went dead. One of them was actually already dead. The other one went dead. There's nothing on there. So within 48 hours, they took that dog food off the back porch and took it away. And I'm like, that's crazy. And really, it probably was within 24 hours because I would bet that they've been seeing it the whole time. When those cameras, they knew when those cameras went dead, they took advantage of it and went and took the dog food, the 35-pound bag of dog food. Now, what's really crazy is I found out that if they find something that is worth value to you, or they like something, that what they'll do is they'll give you a gift back in return. So because they gave me a gift back in return all the time, I started wondering, what would they do with this? Are they going to admit they took it? Or are they just going to take it like a thief in the dark? All of a sudden, I started seeing at different places where they know we go the most, huge human shaped poops, but no human can make this size poop. The first one I saw was about 1.25 feet to 1.5 feet long, and it was 3/4 the size of the can of Pringles can. If you lay it down and take 3/4 of the side, it was that big for over a foot. I'm like, that's crazy. I said, that had to be from them eating the dog food. Then I got a guy that helps me when stuff is done, stuff done around the house, and like when the pump gets stopped up, putting water into the pond, stuff like that. And he called me and he goes, "Hey, have you got a really big dog or something you've let out on the property recently?" No. He said, "Well, there's two huge poops down here by the pump, and they're huge." He goes, "I've never seen poops this big, and they're just huge." And he goes, "And when I was driving out in the middle of the trail where I had just gone down, because it goes to the pond and back, that's the only thing it does, right in the middle of the trail was a fresh poop still smoking." And I'm like, nope, there's no dogs. It might be something that I know of that's here, but it's no dogs. So they were leaving me poop as a gift back for the dog food. Now, I didn't accept the poop because that was just something. I mean, it would have been easy enough to get it, but I I just left it. I just didn't accept it. I just left it. So they were leaving me poops for the dog food. So going back to the gifting station, so I knew they liked dog food, and that was chicken flavored dog food. Then I would put out a jar of peanut butter. I would put out 2 or 3 types of the big bags of cereal. I'd put honey graham crackers. I would put apples out, um, cheese crackers, peanut butter cheese crackers. And what I would do is I would put a whole box of cheese crackers out at a time because I wanted to see how they opened it. As a matter of fact, I got to where I put 2 of them out because they really liked that. And they loved the honey graham crackers. They would take the crackers in the box that we had has a hole in the top made by Lance. They would take their hand, go through the hole in the top and rip it sideways and pull the packs of cheese crackers out through the side. Whereas what we would do is we would go and pull it from the end and slide them out the end. They just ripped it to the side and pulled it out that way. I thought that was really neat. Then, not only that, but they would take the package of them and they would grab it from each side and pull it from the sides. They wouldn't go from the back and rip it. They would pull it from the sides and rip it open that way. Now, I will say, if you ever want to see how hard that is, try it, because you got to have super strong fingers and all to open them that way. But that's how they would open them. And then later on, I started putting salty sweet granola bars, peanut granola bars out there and different things. And they always would do it that way. When they would open them, they'd grab it from the sides and open it up. And on the gifting station at the very beginning, I had some raccoons get up there. So I wanted to block the raccoons because the raccoons have their paws are very, they're able to use them like hands. They're very good with them. So I put stainless steel around all the legs and then a cap on it so that they couldn't climb up it. And then if they did find a way to climb up it, they couldn't reach around the cap. So I'd block them from it. Another thing I found that was really interesting is I was putting the dog food in huge containers, plastic containers, like you would use for Christmas wrapping paper. And in the bottom of it, it's got little creases. And when it would almost get done, there were crumbs in the little dips in around the edges. They would take, and it would look like they would lick their fingers and stick in it and lick it, because you would see little fingertip prints in it before it was all gone. When they ate all the dog food, you would see all these little fingertip prints in the corner. And one time, as a matter of fact, now the gifting station has a roof on it, a deck that's 4x8 plywood it's got a little gap in the middle. And it's about 4 foot off the ground, the platform is. And there's no trees around it, so something could jump from the trees unless it was a squirrel or something. They might have been able to. But they had, at one point in time, with that platform being level, they had picked up that container, tilted it back so that all the crumbs went to one corner. And it looks like they licked all 4 of their fingers and stuck them in the corners. And you can see the fingertip prints in those crumbs that had all been moved to that one corner. And you could see where it had picked some up and ate it from their fingers, much like a person would do if you're eating potato chips. And those crumbs at the very end are the tastiest. It's the saltiest, the best ones. So I don't know about other people. Some will dump the bag in their mouth. I don't like them hitting me, so I just dump them onto the plate and lick my finger and pick them up and eat them. That's what I do. Another crazy thing I found is that they would take a peanut butter jar, and in the beginning, they would always go missing. They would take the top off of it and leave the top because it was either red or blue based on if it was creamy or crunchy. Then they would tear the label off, which was multicolored, and just take the jar and it would disappear. I can tell you that in the beginning, there were 4 of them. There was an adult male. His footprint was 19 to 19 and a half inches long, 10 and a half inches wide. There was an adult female, and at the time, her footprint was 13 and a half inches long, 8 inches wide. Then there was a juvenile whose print was 9.5 to 10 inches long, but it was real narrow, and that one only had 4 toes. And it didn't appear that any had been damaged. It just appeared that that one had only 4 toes. Then there was a young one, which was about 6.5 inches, and a normal size. It was about 4 inches wide. So I knew that there were 4. And the reason I know this is because they quit after we started building up trust and respect to each other. They quit hiding their footprints. They evidently hide their footprints when they're out there because they don't want humans to know they're there, and they don't let people see them very often. That's the reason why people think that they aren't there. So they are great. They are the hide and seek champion, and they can also hide their footprints because they will not put them where, very rarely will they put them in a place to where you can get put the paste in it and stuff and get their casting. You can't cast them. That's what I'm trying to say. But they were leaving their footprints because they knew that I liked them and I could keep up with what was there. So in the beginning, there was just one Bigfoot family or clan. At the time, I was calling them clan. They're more like a family now, so I call them a family. But then about a year later, it changed. I'm down there and I'm looking. All of a sudden, all their trails, somewhere they found 10-foot long white PVC pipes. They're 1/4-inch PVC pipes. 10 foot long, and they found some. They started marking all their trails. They would put them on the ground from their trail, pointing at items that were important. One was pointing at the gifting station. One was pointing at the trail that had the apples. One was pointing, the others were pointing at other trails. But one was actually broke and only 4 foot long, and it was in a little brush, a little, sorry about that, a little piece of brush, and it was pointing up towards the sky. That confused me because this isn't marking a trail, it's pointing up. I go over there and look at it. It's pointing towards a hornet's nest in a tree that I had never seen. So not only were they marking trails, but they were marking danger too. And I'm thinking, why are they doing this? Why are they marking these trails? They've been here for a long, long time. They know where all the trails are. It didn't make sense. So I called my friend in North Georgia again and told him what was going on. And he says, it sounds like they're doing it because there's new ones moving in. He said sometimes they'll remark them when different ones or new ones are moving into the area. Then all of a sudden, I started seeing. Now, I will tell you that the adult male, he comes and goes. He's not here all the time. He will be here when a baby is born to the adult female. He'll be here 2 to 3 weeks in. He'll be here for about a week during mating season. And then the rest of the time, he's just walking through, coming and going. But the adult female's here all the time. The juvenile's here all the time. And the young one was here all the time. But all of a sudden, I start seeing 2 to 3 juvenile footprints. I start seeing 2 baby footprints. I'm like, wait a second. These babies are the same age. The baby prints are anywhere from 4 inches to 5 inches, really 4.5 to 4 3/4 inches. And I'm looking at it and it doesn't make sense to me. But yet, every time there's a baby going to the gifting station, there's a juvenile with it. And I started thinking, wait a second, this is different. They mark the trails. All of a sudden, I started hearing blue jay calls everywhere. Now, as a kid, where I grew up, we had blue jays. But here on this property, I'd never seen blue jays. I'd only had bluebirds. So that was different. And every time I'd walk out of the house, it was like an alarm system would go off in the woods. All these blue jay calls would go off. And there actually were some blue jays there. It wasn't just being imitated. There actually were blue jays that moved in from somewhere. But I called the friend back in North Georgia, and he says, it sounds like they have made your place a nursery. I said, a nursery? He said, yeah. When sometimes in an area, if there's other areas that they're too dangerous for a baby, or there is a lot of hunters or danger around from humans, they will take the young ones and leave them with another female to watch them for a while. And then when they get old enough to be able to handle it, then they will take them back with that clan. And they're usually related clans. The clans are usually somehow related, sister, brother, something like that. They're not a different clan. They're related, but they will make a nursery. I said, okay. And what I found was there was always one more. And then the nursery went on for about 3 years. There was one juvenile with every baby all the time. Then there was also an extra juvenile who would be a day watcher, and he would stay at certain places and just do a tree knock if we were in the area to let them all know that, hey, there's a person here. Now they don't do that anymore with us because they know that we're safe. One of them actually got in trouble one time down by the pond because he must have been a new one. He was down there and we were there, and it did a tree knock. And then where the mother stays, she did an owl call up on top of the ridge to answer back. Okay, I understand. And then he did another tree knock. Well, then she did another out call. Now this is 2:30 in the afternoon, and where she's making the call is way up high on a ridge at a place where I know she stays, but it was coming from the ground. It wasn't coming from a big tree. Then he did it again. She didn't like it, so she goes, ooh, like that. I looked at my wife. I said, "Oh, the mom's mad. Just that one just got told off." That if we have never heard another tree knock from the pond anymore after that. So the word got out. Hey, if it's these two people, they're good. We don't need to know it. Don't aggravate the mom when she's trying to sleep. Don't wake her up because you're going to get in trouble. So I found out that they did have a nursery there. And what was really neat is the babies would come in about the same time every year, somewhere between the last week of March and the first week of June is when they would come in. And every year is the same thing. There was always one juvenile with one baby. Now, sometimes the juveniles were the same because I could tell by the footprint it was the same one from the year before. Sometimes it looked different. So it wasn't always the same juvenile. They would be there for 8 to 10 months, and then they would be gone. I guess the original mom would come back and get them, and they'd be gone, and then it would start over again. Now, out of 10 babies that I've seen during the nursery time, 8 of the 10 came in during that time zone, which leads me to believe there's a possibility that they have a breeding season, much like deer do. But I have seen one born in October, and I've seen one that came in December. So even though that might be the preferred time, I think they're capable of producing a baby anytime, much like human can. But again, I'm just going by when I see the footprints and when they come to the nursery and when they show up. So I'm going off the basis of the footprints. I don't have any scientific way of proving that to be a fact, but I'm just going by, what I'm seeing. So then I started having sightings after they let us know they were there. And what I'll do is, and this is something I don't usually do, I don't talk as much about the sightings as I do about the interactions we have between them, because we've had so many interactions between them that's what I learned from is the interactions. The things that happen back and forth is what I learned from the most. So sightings, I don't talk about a lot, which a lot of people don't like that. And I understand because so many people want to hear about the sightings. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about the sightings. I'm going to tell about the ones and tell you I'm very hard on calling what is a sighting. Okay. I've seen them in the woods. I've seen them looking at me in the trees, the shape, even the shape of the head. I've seen the faces looking at me, but I don't call it a sighting because this is what I use to call a sighting. It has to be I either have to see hair or a face and have to know 100% it can't be any other animal to call it a sighting. So that means they have to be fairly close so that I can determine not only does it meet the hair or the face, but that it's not any other animals. Now, again, it's only you're going to get 2 to 3 second glimpses. They're not going to sit there and pose. People think it's so easy to get pictures of them. It's not. Why hadn't you had great pictures from them since the Roger Gimlin, the Patterson Gimlin film, or the Freeman stuff? They're just not going to stand there and pose for a picture. And usually, if they are doing that, I'm thinking that they're trying to lead you away from a young one or something so that you don't do something to a young one, is my perception of it. But anyway, so the first one that we saw, I've had 4 that meet the parameter of what I call a sighting. Then I've got 3 others that I don't call a sighting, and I will tell you why. During the time it was a nursery, the little ones would play with our dogs. They actually, it's another story, completely another story, but we heard them kill a dog one time at night. We heard the dog growling. We were coming drove through down the driveway. We always have our window down so we can hear the frogs and the water that's in the field, and then hear what's going on in the woods. And we heard a dog growling at something, and this something snatched it up, and it really just tore it apart. It was horrifying, the sound. My wife drove off the driveway, pointed her lights down to the creek. It was just on the other side of the creek. Honked the horn and said, "Stop that." It stopped immediately. I think it broke its neck. There was not another sound of the dog being tortured, of them walking, nothing. It stopped immediately when she said it. But we were scared. We wanted to make sure our dogs were protected. We didn't know if that was one of our dogs or not. We go check, and it's not one of our dogs. So we go down there and just say out loud, "Hey, just to let you know and understand that if you hurt our dogs, then that breaks the trust because they're part of our family." Shortly after that, we had two dogs on the inside. We had a pit bull that was one of the kids, and we had a Yorkie that was one of the kids. And they started running down to the gifting station every morning. And the pit bull was white. He started coming back with big, huge fingerprints on its back, like he was being petted. Then we started finding, when I would put out the cheese crackers, the peanut butter cheese crackers, empty cheese cracker things by the fence where the dogs were, and there would be a juvenile or an adult with a young one, and the wrapper was left right by it like they were feeding the dogs outside. So they actually started building a friendship with our dogs so that they wouldn't harm our dogs. And I think they were leaving the handprints to make sure I knew that, hey, we're building a friendship with them. You won't be a problem. We don't want to break the trust, all like that. And yes, they are that smart. So anyway, the other three, I kind of got off, and that's what happens a lot. Is because there's in so many interactions, there's something that relates to it. I go into it to just explain it better. There were little ones. My little Yorkie would go outside. We had to put the pit bull out with the other dogs outside because he started chewing up the furniture, and we couldn't afford him being in the house. So the little Yorkie would go out there. He would go around a tree. Then all of a sudden, I'd try to yell at him to get him to come in. And all of a sudden, I would see this little monkey thing running across the ground in front of him, and he's chasing it. Now, he's not barking. He's not trying to catch it. It's like they're playing. And I'm thinking, what kind of animal is that can run like a monkey, a chimpanzee or something? What is it? I had no idea. But then later, I saw one. We had a trailer down by the dog house because we had a bunch of people over, and I wanted to block the dogs from seeing everybody so they wouldn't be barking the whole time. And our Yorkie kept looking back behind between the trailer and the dog pen. And then all of a sudden, our Yorkie runs to the edge of the woods. This little monkey thing runs after him, goes by him. The little dog looks at him and then turns around and comes to us as if to say, "I'll protect you, come this way." And it followed him. And then after it went off into the woods, and our little dog came back, and it ran the same way. I also saw one time on the platform of the gifting station, and it slid off of it like a little kid would a platform in a playground. You know how a kid will get on the platform and then he'll throw his legs off and slide down to the ground? Well, that's what this one did. We were driving down there, and I said, "There's something up on the platform." And it slid down, went to all fours with its butt towards us, hesitated for a second, and then it moved on all fours. And it was real strange because the arms and the legs were outside its framework, and it moved spider-ish. It moved weird. and it moved to the back and went down a trail that I know is an escape route for them because it's got huge vines going up in big trees where the little ones go up and can get away from danger immediately. So I see that. Now I don't call those three a sighting because I'm not 100% sure it couldn't be another animal. There could be a chimpanzee or something that's escaped from somewhere be out here that I saw, but I don't know of any. Hadn't seen any of those jumping around in trees, and the ones I saw didn't have a tail. I mean, it had a butt like we have. So it didn't have a tail, but still, I don't call those a sighting. So let me get back to the sightings. The first sighting I saw was in the middle of the afternoon, about 1:30. We were having lunch. We have a bay window right next to the house, and we have our table there. And I look down there on the trail that goes down there. There is something black squatted about 60 yards watching us. And I'm staring at it and staring at it and staring at it. And I realize it has to be one of them because it's squatted down, but you can see the head on top. And the thing that astonished me about that sighting was that um, it its shoulders, not the triceps, but the on top of the shoulders, the muscle on top of the shoulders was so huge. It was coming all the way from like the end of the shoulder going up to underneath where our ears were, and it was like it didn't have a neck. But those trout muscles were so huge, I was amazed by it. I was just staring at it, staring at it. And then I told all the others, I said, look, I think there's one right down there. And they all looked at it. No, that's just a stump, you know. And I said, no, that's our trail. It's right in the middle of our trail. That is not a stump. That's one of them that's down there. I said, I can see the head. I can see the trout muscles on top of the shoulders. Now, it was slender. Um, and I would imagine if it stood up just by what I was seeing, it would be 5.5 to 6 foot tall. But it was an athletic slender, but those trout muscles were huge. So I had them mark where it was. And I said, well, as soon as we leave, it's going to disappear. And sure enough, so we start taking our dishes to it. And then we go back. We didn't even think about it. We look down there and it's gone. It's completely gone. So later on, we go down there and look, and sure enough, right where it was squatting on the road, you could see the footprints leading to the woods and where the creek is. So that was the first one. And what's amazing about that one was it was solid black and the trout mussels were so big, but it sat there for a long, long time, just still, just squatting, watching us. He was watching us and I'm watching it. And what really makes me mad is I had a pair of binoculars probably 7 to 10 foot from me. I could have gone, got them, and zoomed in on it, and I never thought about it at all. I still to this day kicking myself because I didn't, because I would have loved to seen what the face looked like, got a good view of the face. So that was the first one. Now I will tell you that people that live in cohabitation sites or coexisting sites, you know, there's some people say it's not called cohabitation, but um, I'm not going to debate that. We are coexisting on basically the same property, or they come through it a lot. So the second one, but people that live on those areas, somehow they mark you. Now, don't ask me how they mark you, but the others at other locations know you're safe and let you know they're there, which is totally crazy. But let me tell you about the second one. So we had a family get together in LaGrange, Georgia, away from the house. We had rented it's a house, but it had 2 stories on it, but the one you can only see from the backside because it goes down a steep hill. And what we did was we go get the house and we invited everybody over on Saturday. We got there on Friday. And it was like an old farm place because it had all these little sheds, and all the sheds had old farm equipment in it, old disc, old, just all kind of different stuff. Now behind the house, it drops way steep, real steep down to a pond down there. And to the west of that house, they had made a road and put gravel on it so that people could walk down it and not slip down the hill from all the leaves and get hurt. So they could get to the pond to fish and stuff. So my job was to cook the Boston butts. I'm going to smoke the Boston butts. So on the back, they have a deck off the top floor and a table up there, a picnic table up there. And then the stairs that goes down to where I had the smoker. So I would go and I was staying up there to make sure the temperature and the smoke stayed hot enough for it to cook the Boston butts. And when it didn't, I would go down there and add some more stuff to it and lump coal or chips to it to make more stuff to give it that great flavor. And it was really good. But the smell was going towards the woods to the west. And I was looking that way and I was talking to a guy. He was facing the other direction to the east, and I was facing the west because that's the way the smoke was going because I was monitoring it. All of a sudden, over there by that road with the gravel, there is a huge, huge pine tree. And I saw movement. I caught movement. So immediately I've got my eyes trained to start looking for something horizontal like a deer's back, which is unnatural. But what I'm seeing is something's vertical next to that tree. I start looking and there's a little bit of a breeze blowing. Of course, that's, it would blow the smoke that way. But here, peeping out from behind that tree was a Bigfoot. And it was reaching around the tree. It had its hand on the front side of the tree. It had hair hanging down 4 to 5 inches off the arms. And the color of it was different than the ones I'd seen. The ones I'd seen here was completely black. This was, if you take a pine straw color, and then you take an orangutan orange color, it was in between that. It was a little more towards the orangutan orange, but it had a distinct orangish tint to it, but also with some of the darkness of the pine straw color. But I could see the hair waving off the arm. I could see the shoulder. I could see the face. I could see everything about it, the hand on the tree. And I can tell you that the hand was extremely huge, and the hand was a dark tan color. It was like it was just a dark tan, and the face didn't have wasn't completely covered with hair. It was open, mostly with thin hair down below it, and it's staring at me, and I'm staring at it. And it probably was for a couple of minutes. I'm just looking. Now I'm still talking to the guy, but I'm not telling him what I'm looking at because I'm still analyzing it. I'm looking at it and I'm going everything I can get. The thigh bone, the thigh was huge. Um, so I'm analyzing everything I'm looking at. All of a sudden, my phone dings. I get a message. I glanced down just to see who it was, and it was one of those telemarketing messages. So I look back up, and it's gone. It is not there. It has disappeared. I'm like, I knew I shouldn't have taken my eyes off of it so I could look at it more, but 2 minutes is a long time to look at one. Even though I wasn't seeing the whole body, I was seeing the face, I was seeing the color of the skin, I was seeing the hair color, the size of the hand, all this, and now it's gone. I never mentioned it to the guy out there um, because I'm still in my head trying to go through the process of analyzing what I saw and stuff. And then I realized that the smell was going that direction. It must have been in the woods and smelled it and was coming up there to see if it could get some free food, and saw me looking at it and was understood I was safe and was just staring at me. So then the next day, I didn't tell anybody about anything because we had a lot of people there. We were cooking and people were eating and we were having a good time. So the next day on Sunday, we had to have everything out by 11, and I don't like to be late. All of a sudden, me and my wife go sit on that back porch to cool off a little bit. She makes a cup of coffee, and we're sitting out there drinking the coffee, and it's a little bit past 11, but I'm not going to raise Cain. We got everything pretty much done. We got to put a couple more things in the car and go. But I'm going to let her enjoy her coffee. And we're just, talking about things that happened. I just said, babe, I got a problem. She goes, what? I said, I think I've gone Bigfoot nuts. And she goes, what do you mean? You've gone Bigfoot nuts. And I told her the whole thing. She goes, babe, did you see my text message yesterday? And I said, no, what text message? And that text message from that one that I looked at, that promotional type thing, had moved it up the line. And I'd never really all day looked at all the messages. I go pull up her message. There is a picture of the gravel within 5 yards of where I saw that Bigfoot. And it said, Bigfoot is here. It had the outline of a huge footprint in the gravel within 5 yards of where I saw it standing by the tree. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going crazy after all. She told me the day before Bigfoot was there, but I never saw it. So that settles it. Now, to make it even stranger, I told somebody about that sighting. And, it was fairly close to a town. And they didn't, I don't know if they didn't believe me or, because a lot of times people think they're only deep in the woods and stuff. And now they say they believe me, but here's what I know. It didn't get posted until later on. Later on, it got posted. But then I get a call and I said, hey, that one that you saw, I had another report from another house in that area, 1,000 yards from where you saw yours, they saw one. I said, oh, so you didn't believe me? No, I believed you. It was just real strange. And I was like, yeah, you didn't believe me. But anyway, the other thing that I did was a year and a half later, we went, and there's a huge lake near there that's got some islands on it. And it turns out that it's about 1 to 3 miles straight through the woods to the lake. And my wife's dad was having a retirement party. So we got a fishing guide to go crappie fishing because we were going to have all the family meet there at that lake for a cookout to celebrate his retirement. So we had like 6 people fishing, and we had the guide, and we were going out, and he was going through all the fishing places he had made for the fish attractant places that he had made for the crappie. So we're pulling in the crappie, we're catching them and stuff like that. I see a little island. Now, this island I can see through, and I was just thinking, I wonder if on these islands, if there's any Bigfoot, because at the time I'm thinking it was fairly close to where we had stayed back then, but I didn't know how far till after this event. I actually looked it up and saw that it was, I really think it was about 1.5 miles as a crow flies from where I saw that one, but it could have been a little bit more. It could have been as much as 3 miles, as little as 1 mile. But so we come up to the next island. Now, this is a bigger island. And in my head, I say, I wonder if there's any Bigfoot on that island because you can't see through that one. All of a sudden, there's a tree knot comes from the island. Now, the guy next to me, he cuts trees for a living, like when hurricanes come through or people need stuff out of their yard. So he I said, did you hear that? He goes, yeah. I said, have you ever heard that before? He goes, no, I've never heard that before. He said, it sounds like a wooden bat being whacked up against a tree. I said, yeah, exactly. So I turned to the fishing guide and I said, hey, is there anybody that lives on these islands? He goes, no, they don't allow people to live on the islands. He said, now people may go and land on the other side of it or land on the side of it and go, make a little, cook some food or something. He said, but we're going over to the other side in a minute. We'll know if somebody is. So it wasn't 3 minutes or more later. We go and leave from that, go around to the other side. There's nothing there. There's no signs of anything, any boat being drug up on the shore that day. But yet a tree knot came from that island. And I said, that's crazy. So then we go to another island. Now, this island you could almost see through, and I kind of said the same thing. I wonder if there's any Bigfoot here in my head, and nothing happened. Then the last island we came to was a bigger island than the others. And so I do the same thing again. I ask in my head, I was like, well, I wonder if there's any Bigfoot here. There was 3 tree knots came from it. There was 2 from one point and 1 from another point. And when he puts the fish attractants around it, he puts it around the whole island so they have them fairly close. And there was nobody at that island at all. So they were letting me know that they were there. And I asked the guy next to me, I said, do you think any animal could make that tree knot? He said, there's no way. He said, it sounded like they took the biggest baseball bat made and hit a tree with it. Only a person could do that. And then I don't know if it could be that loud. So he didn't know what it was, but I knew what it was. Later on, our daughter bought a house. The first time I go to her house, it's right next to a big bottom. I'm on her back porch, and she knows about them. And I go to her back porch. There's 2 tree knocks in the woods behind her house. She looks at me and goes, really, Dad? You brought them here too? Really? I just laughed. I said, they have a way of knowing. 3 out of the first 5 times I went there, there were tree knocks in those woods behind their place. And she said, I'm not coming out here anymore with you because I don't want to know about it. I don't want to know that they're here, So I said, okay. I said, but at least you know. So that was the second sighting, was the one at that location. Now, the third sighting is rather unique because I had taken my mother to a doctor in the middle of the day, and they pattern you like crazy. So they know exactly what time of day you go places, go to work, come back. They have you patterned. So I'm coming back, bringing my mom back to our house because she went up to a doctor up here near where we live. And on the way down the driveway, something caught my eye in the woods. And I saw a flash like a rifle barrel shining. And I go, look. And in the woods, about 70 yards away, I see a face. So I take and I slow down. My window was already down, took a picture of it. I get back to the house, I blow the picture up. And there is a face of one about 5 foot tall. Its hair is really short, but solid black, about 2 inches, and it looks like it had the cream on it or gel, and it pushed back like somebody had rubbed it backwards. And then the face was weird on that one. The face was a light tan and it was shining. That's what the shine I called. It was like somebody armoralled a light tan dashboard. So I'm thinking, okay, so one of them knew that the timing was off and wanted to get a look and see what was going on. And that was one watching me. Now, I don't call it a sighting because, again, it did not meet my parameters for it, but I had the picture of it. So I knew what it was and what it looked like, but I still don't call it a sighting. I want to go by what I set up. A few months later, Now, I will say after they made a nursery, I started having little ones come to that bay window and watching TV through it at night. There was a back window they would come to and they would look through it watching TV, but yet we could not see them from where we were sitting. We could not see that back window. So we had already seen the prints and knew they were doing that. Well, this one night, I fell asleep in the chair. My wife went to bed early in the bed, and about 2 a.m., I wake up. The little Yorkie is standing up on the armrest of that chair, just staring at the window, just staring, not barking, nothing, just staring at the window. I looked at him. I said, "What are you doing?" It would never look at me. It was just staring at the window. I go and look at that window, and there is that face I had taken a picture of, the light tan with the dark black hair flattened back on its head. I'm like, okay. So it's looking in the window. I started thinking, I've got relatives that are going to come here in a couple of weeks, and some of them are going to be sleeping out here. I said, they can't be looking in the windows. So I get up and go out the door. And of course, they left as soon as they saw me getting up. And I just kindly tell them, I say, look, I don't go to y'all's bedroom looking in y'all's bedroom because there's areas that I don't go into where I know they are. I said, I don't want you looking in our windows. They never did it after that time. And when I went out there the next morning, I found out why that one was in the front window, because there was also another one in the back window. So there was one in the back window and that one in the front window. They were both watching TV. And also, they had left us gifts. They've left us a ton of gifts. They left us a gift on the banister when they first started watching TV, and they knew that I was seeing the prints. It was a quartz rock, and it had an inclusion in the middle of it. It was a beautiful quartz rock, and it was shaped like an arrowhead. But it wasn't a arrowhead made by Indians because it wasn't chipped away at the edges and serrated. I used to collect them as a child and study how they were made. And so it was not made by Indians or Native Americans. But what was strange was we had an arrowhead collection that I made by the TV. So as they're looking in, they can see that arrowhead collection there. And they gifted us a rock shaped like an arrowhead that's out of quartz with a beautiful inclusion in the middle. And I call it my ET rock because ET had that glowing in where his heart was, and that's where that is. So I call that my ET gift. But it was beautiful. So they got the message and they hadn't done that anymore. So that was the third sighting. Now, the fourth sighting was rather unique because the fourth sighting was a baby. I went and put stuff out at the gifting station, and then I went down the trail and started going across the creek. Right when I get in the creek makes its own wind current. The wind is pushed or pulled by the creek, and it makes like a little piping effect where it just goes down it. I smelled one of the smells because I'd smelled a lot of them. I know a lot about their smells. I smelled a lot of them, and I could smell there was a Bigfoot smell. And right over to my right, one of our sons had seen one. There's a little barn over there they used to use for farming. I guess they put hay in it. And there was a chair at the pond that had been moved over behind that barn, which is about 2.5, 3/10 of a mile away, but was over there behind that barn sitting as if something moved it over there to sit in. And there's a door on the one side, and they knocked out some of the siding on the other side so they can go out either way. And he had seen one down there by the creek one day when he was going to get some dirt from down there. He saw one running off, so knew one was there. But anyway, I'm pulling up on the other side and I don't see anything. So I back into the creek. The smell's still there. So I pull up on the other side again. I don't see anything. I back into the creek. I can still smell it, but it's weaker now. So I go ahead and said, well, I guess I'm just not going to see it. So I go ahead and pull to the top of the hill, and there to my right, there is a shape of something that looks like a rabbit. Okay. But there's no rabbit this big. This thing was sitting on its butt. It's had its arms or legs out and it looked like a rabbit. In my head, my brain is trying to tell me that this thing is a rabbit. Now, out west in New Mexico and other places, they have these huge rabbits. Um, they have a different name for them, but they're huge. But this thing's even bigger than that. This thing, if it stood up, would be 3 foot tall, 3 to 3.5 foot tall. So, as I always do, I start trust but verify. I started analyzing it. It's just sitting there. It never looked at me. It's looking uphill. And the direction it's looking is where the mom comes from. And I look for a tail. I don't see a tail because it would be sitting on it. Then the next thing I look for is the ears. Now, this thing is 10 yards from me at most, maybe 7 yards. And it's in the sunlight. The sunlight, that one spot was shining down on it. I'm looking for the ears. I'm expecting some of these big ears to be either forward or turned towards me or straight back. Its ears were on the side of its head. It was not a rabbit. It was a baby Bigfoot. And I learned a lot about the ears from that time because I was studying those ears. They seem to be a little lower than ours would be. They seem to be a little bit smaller, and it seemed to be a little bit flatter on the head than ours are. Um, then when it moved, I could tell this is not a rabbit. This is a baby Bigfoot because it moved very similar to the one that slid off the gifting station that day. And in two moves, it was out of my sight. And I really think that it was looking at its mom, and its mom was saying, "Don't move, just pretend to be in that position." And then I was sitting there watching it, and then it said, "Okay, come on, time to leave." And it left, and I went on. So that was actually a baby that I saw. And its fur was a little bit different color. It was a dark brown, but also had a little bit of black mixed in with it. It was weird. It was like the hair color had a mixture in it of dark brown and some black. It was more dark brown than black, but it was a mixture. So that was the fourth sighting that I saw. Now, I've had a lot of interactions and some what people would call scary stuff happen. But the scary stuff that I saw that happened were things that I learned from. And, so really it wasn't, I understood it after I understood what was going on. So I don't know where you want me to go from this. Do you want me to tell more about some of the interactions at the gifting station or some of the other interactions they did?
I think
Or,
I think we're good with that. I think you have been extremely thorough and very enjoyable, everything you said. But why don't we save that maybe for a second interview down the road and we can kind of start where you left off?
okay, sounds good. Because I've got like 20 to 25 hours of interactions with them
Yeah,
here and other places. I mean, it's just amazing how much they've interacted with us.
exactly. Well, I do appreciate you coming on the show today. I've got another interview coming up here, or we continue on for a little bit longer, but I have some other people I've got to get to. But thank you so much for coming on the show, and let's just plan on doing something down the road.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you and have a good day.